At ground level, this environment presents as a highly fragmented urban brownfield. It is an ecosystem dominated by concrete, asphalt, and dense human infrastructure. But this 3D map reveals a counterintuitive reality. These 7 central town sites actually function as a high-performing ecological bridge. The corridor connects expansive Selcombe and Riverside Park habitats out east, straight through the urban center, to the Knapp, Knoll, and Peak Ridge networks west. The spaces facilitating this connection are severely limited. The corridor runs directly through areas of high human population density, constrained by roads and commercial zones. Yet, the data demonstrates this highly fragmented network supports 17 distinct habitats. This proportional chart shows these habitats host 157 floral species, accounting for 46.3% of all floral diversity recorded across the 50-site regional survey. Urban ecotones are rarely the uniformly degraded dead zones we assume them to be. They are highly complex, spatially dense environments, and understanding how they function requires rigorous structural deconstruction. To see exactly how this floral diversity survives, we have to look past the macrogeography and focus on street-level, localized anomalies. High plant diversity in urban spaces is almost never evenly distributed. It is artificially boosted by isolated structural features that create unique microhabitats. The topography of Glengorrel serves as a prime example of one of these artificial sanctuaries. The deep, heavily shaded terrain, combined with the historic stone walls, locks in moisture and severely limits sunlight. This creates a highly stable, damp microclimate immune to the temperature swings of the surrounding streets. This specific environment acts as a strict biological haven for cryptogams, spore-reproducing plants like mosses, lichens, and ferns that require consistent moisture to survive. Moving across the network to Blackmore Gardens reveals a very different localized anomaly. The soil chemistry here has remained undisturbed long enough to sustain ancient soil indicators, specifically highlighting a strong presence of waxcap fungi, which are notoriously intolerant of modern fertilizers. A short distance away, the parish churchyard operates as a third highly localized sanctuary. It serves a dual ecological function. The grounds support 60 distinct wildflower species, while the architecture of the church itself provides structural roosting crevices for pipistrelle bats. Beyond individual structures, the entire network is subjected to a specialized coastal niche. The harsh marine proximity and high salt exposure allow 100% of the region's shingle-associated halophytes, highly salt-tolerant plants, to thrive exactly where typical broad-leaved species would quickly die. The structural fragmentation of the city creates a highly skewed environment. Specialized life thrives here specifically because of the isolation and the unique conditions provided by concrete crevices and historic stonework. However, the localized success of these microhabitats stands in sharp contrast to the ecological reality of the town's formalized public parks. We have to define a biological condition known as taxonomic skew. This occurs when an ecosystem presents a robust population in one biological class, but is entirely hollowed out in another. Formal amenity gardens often fail as habitats because they rely heavily on imported, non-native plants. While visually appealing to humans, these species offer zero nutritional or reproductive value to local wildlife. This diagram illustrates the resulting food web. The wide base layer of flora is robust, but without native host plants, the secondary consumer layer, the insects, is almost entirely empty. The quantitative result of this environment is severe. Local insect life within the town center suffers a total collapse in both quantity and variety. The most alarming metric here is that there is absolutely zero representation of hemiptera, true bugs, recorded anywhere in this network. This hostility extends beyond the terrestrial parks and directly into the aquatic environment of the Lower Sid waterway. During the late 1700s, massive human interventions physically re-engineered the river's behavior. This top-down cross-section shows the specific engineering choices of that era, straightening the natural meander, installing a weir, and fortifying the banks with smooth concrete. The mechanical outcome is a waterway optimized purely for high-velocity water displacement and aggressive flood control. The ecological cost of this design is absolute. The uniform velocity completely eradicates the varied, slow water niches required for freshwater flora and fauna to establish themselves. Human-centric aesthetics and historical flood management choices actively engineer out entire biological classes, creating dead zones hidden in plain sight. Reversing this severe biological imbalance requires aggressive, modernized policy interventions. Passive conservation is mathematically insufficient here. The primary legislative tool driving this correction is the Sid Valley Neighborhood Plan. The plan enforces a strict mandate: new developments must incorporate a 20% biodiversity net gain. Vertically, developers must integrate living green roofs and embed swift bricks for nesting. Horizontally, it mandates hedgehog highways, cutouts allowing wildlife to navigate residential garden walls. These structural mandates are paired with modern botanical management strategies deployed across existing public lands. In spaces like the churchyards, the municipality has introduced a 3-tier mowing regime, deliberately leaving sections uncut to allow native wildflowers to reach full maturation and seed. This is supported by an integrated weed management framework, which explicitly targets a total ban on the use of glyphosate herbicides on public banks by 2026. A specific climate adaptation strategy is also underway in Connaught Gardens. Horticulturists are transitioning the beds towards xeriscaping, prioritizing Mediterranean plants. This dramatically reduces the municipality's water dependency in preparation for drier summers, while providing crucial nectar sources for coastal pollinators. But the largest ecological protection measure relies on connecting large-scale gray civil engineering to blue aquatic protection. The Sidmouth Sewer Improvement Scheme centers entirely on the installation of a massive 100,000-liter underground storm storage tank. By retaining this massive volume of rapid runoff during severe weather, the tank prevents storm overflow spills. This directly protects the fragile coastal water quality and insulates the halophyte habitats on the shoreline from chemical shock. The survival of the urban ecotone depends entirely on this hybrid approach, pairing massive, heavy civil infrastructure with strictly enforced biological mandates. Yet this artificially managed stability is constantly threatened by physical and economic forces that are virtually impossible to fully resolve. The primary economic conflict is driven by the town's reliance on the tourism industry, where delicate ecology is constantly subjected to massive volumes of foot traffic. High-impact public events physically degrade the soil architecture over a matter of days. The mechanical weight of thousands of visitors causes severe soil compaction. This crushes the microscopic soil pores, which cuts off oxygen to tree roots and destroys the ground's natural ability to drain surface water. Simultaneously, the network faces uncontrollable environmental hazards pressing in directly from the coastline. Violent winter storms and heavy wave action constantly batter the concrete seawall defenses, threatening the immediate shoreline. This continuous energy leads directly to aggressive coastal erosion. Single geological events can suddenly smother highly vulnerable zones, like the beach garden, beneath tons of shifting shingle and collapsed earth. This is compounded by the chronic pressure of marine plastic and litter washing ashore, demanding constant community-led volunteer beach cleans to prevent total habitat degradation. Even the most progressive local policies cannot fully insulate this environment from the overwhelming forces of macroeconomic tourism and climatological violence. Finally, the success of these urban biodiversity policies is limited by a persistent psychological hurdle. Public perception of green spaces is deeply skewed toward a sterile, highly manicured amenity aesthetic. Vital, specialized native species, like the coastal halophytes required to hold the shoreline together, are frequently viewed unfavorably by the public, mischaracterized as weeds or eyesores because they don't look like ornamental garden plants. The reality of this 7-site brownfield network is highly complex. It is a dense, working city squeezed between ancient ridges and an eroding coastline. True urban biodiversity is never achieved by simply letting nature take course. It is a highly specialized, artificially engineered infrastructure project that requires continuous, data-driven defense.